First, though, let's turn to the president's ambitious agenda on infrastructure. Economic advisor Gary Cohn reportedly told House lawmakers in a private meeting yesterday that they will get a chance to vote on a gas tax early next year when Congress considers Trump's $1 trillion infrastructure package. That's according to Politico. Other reports suggest that it could be a 7-cent increase on gas taxes, which bring in the head of America's largest construction and civil engineering company, Bechtel Group. The CEO and chairman, Brendan Bechtel, is with us. Brendan, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What do you think about a gas tax increase? What does that say about the demand for infrastructure and what kind of an impact might that have?
Well, I think to quantify the challenge, the demand for infrastructure globally is about $3 trillion a year, is the pent-up demand. Within the U.S. alone, we expect that about $2 trillion is required over the next 10 years in the United States. So there's been political consensus, I would say, really throughout the election season and lately around the need for infrastructure. The challenge, the debate is around how to pay for it. The gas tax is one way that we might solve that challenge. It's not been even inflation adjusted for many, many years now. And it has traditionally been one of the biggest revenue streams that's funded public infrastructure in the United States.
Do you think we will see an infrastructure plan from this administration?
I think there's a very clear focus on tax reform as the first priority.
Right.
What I'm hearing is that infrastructure's in the landing pattern after that, but it's all about tax reform in the short term.
And I want to ask you about the economy, because I know you're watching copper, obviously, and that's going to tell us something. But let me get your take on this. The Crown Prince, the future king of Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, told me about his plans for this new city, NEOM, a futuristic city set to debut in 2030. Watch this.
The city will be built on the newest of technologies of today. The opportunity is unimaginable. A region that is almost vacant. There are many dreams from the Saudi leadership, many of the Saudis, and many our partners and of the large companies or individuals. Thousands of dreams that will be established in NEOM.
It sounds like an incredible opportunity. Bechtel has a long-standing partnership. 75 years you go back in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, next year will be our 75th anniversary. I think this is so exciting. The Crown Prince's speech on your panel, and there were a lot of subtle messages in there, too, that for those of us that have been around a while are very significant milestones. But specifically, the example of NEOM, I think it's demonstrative of the vision that's laid out in Vision 2030. It's a bold, ambitious, but achievable plan. I think an interesting way to talk about this is to reflect on Bechtel's history in Saudi Arabia. When we got started 74 years ago in the 40s and 50s, we were working on oil pipelines, on jetties, on basic civil infrastructure like railways. In the 1970s, we started on Jubail, which at the time was a fishing village. Today, 40 years later, we're still working there.
Wow.
And it is the largest industrial city in the Middle East, and it accounts for somewhere between 4 and 5% of Saudi Arabia's non-oil GDP. So while I've been here at the conference, people have been coming up and asking me, do you think this is achievable? All the projects that are laid out in Vision 2030, do you think it's possible? And I said, again, remember this example of Jubail. 40 years ago it was a fishing village. Today it's the largest industrial city in the region. I think the difference is I don't think the Crown Prince is going to give us 40 years to get all this done. This is he's really driving everyone to keep up, which I think is incredible.
It's incredible, the vision that he's had, and really pushing to change some of the historic cultures here, opening it up to foreign investment, allowing women to drive. We talked about that on the panel. Let me ask you about copper. I mean, if you look at a chart of copper, it's had a tough 10 years, obviously, but now we're seeing money move back into copper. What does that tell you?
Well, so I think with respect to growth, it's one of the things we're most excited about. So we've built roughly about a third of all the copper concentrators on Earth, particularly focused in Chile and the Andes. And based on the study work that we're doing, which is a pretty good predictor of big project investment decisions over the next few years, we're seeing things start to pick back up, and that's driven predominantly by the copper price.
And do you think that copper at this point is indicative of the fact that we're seeing a pickup in housing? I mean, copper obviously goes in everything from cars to your house, and so is it indicative
electrical wiring?
Electrical wires. So is it indicative of construction?
Yeah, I think it's it tends to be a pretty good leading indicator of an interest in construction activity broadly. So I do think it's a good indicator of that. But I also think the mining sector is so cyclical and boom bust in terms of oversupply, undersupply, and the way they approach CapEx investments. And so, 10 years ago, we had a period with a lot of big projects going on to meet the demand, and then it got a little overbuilt, and then I would say demand's been building, and it's time to start doing projects again.
So how would you characterize the economy right now from that standpoint in terms of construction and what you're seeing in commodities?
I would say, so we still continue in the oil and gas market, and still across most of the mining sector, low cost is king. It's all about low cost. And so it's all about who can work their way down the cost of supply curve. Growth markets for us within that, you're looking at niche plays. So anything that benefits from cheap shale gas in the U.S. is a winner. So petrochemicals, combined cycle natural gas power plants. I would say more broadly, you've got, for us, the big growth opportunity in the U.S. and I would say around the world right now is infrastructure. It's public works. It's anything that benefits from the lower cost of raw commodities, which are key inputs to the global economy.
Really fascinating stuff. Brendan, great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
We'll be watching the developments, literally. Brendan Bechtel joining us there.